In this episode, we are going to create an enemy knockback effect, a sound when the enemy gets hit, a death animation, and creating a new type of hurt box for our enemy. Hello and welcome to how to create a Vampire Survivors clone in Godot 4. So in this episode we're going to be doing 3 different tasks, and the first task is going to be creating a knockback. So the first thing I'm just going to do is change this variable from knock_amount to knockback_amount, just so it is consistent with what I have in my reference project. The next thing I'm going to do is just make sure get my reference project up. So what you'll see is that we have a knockback amount, and we are going to use this, and we're going to use this within our hurt box. So with the damage variable, we're going to be adding an angle. We're going to make these equal just a vector2 0 initially, and we're also going to be doing this with the knockback. And we're just going to make that equal to 1. So we're then just going to be checking if the area, which would be the eye spear in our case, actually has that value. So if not area dot get angle equal null. So effectively, if it doesn't have the angle, it's going to return a null, and we don't want that, so we're just using the not keyword. So angle is going to equal area dot angle. So we're going to get the angle from our ice spear, and then we're going to be doing the same with the knockback. If not area dot get knockback amount equal null, we're just going to have knockback equals area dot knockback underscore amount, and then we are going to be adjusting our hurt signal. So you'll see in our signal hurt we have damage. We're going to be adding angle, and we're also going to be adding knockback. So now in our signal, in addition to damage, we're going to be having angle, and we are going to be having knockback. So we're going to save this, and now we're going to be going into our enemy. And so for us to do this, we're going to be adding a new export variable, export var knockback recovery. And we're just going to make this equal 3.5 for the moment. And we're going to be creating a variable called knockback, which is going to equal a vector2.0. So the way this is going to work is that we're just going to go into our hurtbox.hurt. You'll see here that it currently has a angle and a var and a knockback argument at the moment. So we're just going to add this here, angle knockback, and we're going to be making it so that the knockback is going to equal the angle times the knockback amount. Oh, I'm just going to make this amount so we don't confuse it with the knockback. All right, cool. So that's all good there. And now we're just going to do a physics process of knockback equals knockback dot move towards vector2.0 knockback recovery, and then we are just going to be adjusting the velocity to plus equal the knockback. So in our hurt function, we're going to get a knockback amount, which is going to be the angle, which is a vector2 times knockback amount, which is just going to amplify it. We're going to add this towards our velocity, but every single frame we're going to be moving towards vector2.0. So that's going to effectively reduce the amount of knockback that has occurred. So now, well, actually, before we do anything, I need to add the arguments to the player as well. So if we go into hurt, Now, it does need the arguments, but I'm going to be doing an underscore angle and an underscore knockback. And this is purely because I don't want to knock back the player, but it still needs the arguments, so I'm just going to add them here. So now we're just going to save, and hopefully our ice spear will knock down the enemies. So you can see that they're being knocked back on the first hit, which is kind of cool. Now, there is a little bit of a problem. Let's set our HP of our ice spear to 2, and you'll see a problem that occurs. So now it hits it, and you'll see that it actually gets double hit by the same ice spear. And this is because our enemy has the hurt box type of cooldown. And what we're going to be doing is we are going to be adding our hit once hurt box type, which currently is just a pass. So let's talk about what is needed. I'm just going to get the references up. All right, so it seems like I have already gone through and added a var hitbox array. I'm just going to pretend that that wasn't there before. I have done a previous recording where I screwed something up, and I'm just going to be doing a variable hit once array equals an empty array. So we are making this brand new. Don't worry about that. And now we are just going to be checking if hit once array dot has area. So the hit once, it's going to capture anytime it's hit. So if it's hit by the ice spear, it's going to capture that it's been hit by the ice spear. So we're going to do equals false. We're just going to do a hit once array dot append area. And then of course, if it has the area, we're just going to do a return, which is going to break this entire function, and it's not going to do any of the damage, angle, knockback, any of that stuff. So it's not going to do any of that stuff. Now, one of the things that can occur is that the array can capture effectively attacks which disappear. So as you probably know, we queue free the ice spear if it hits too many enemies or on timeout. So we need a way to remove the ice spear that queue frees itself from our hit once array. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating a signal. So this is just going to be, so we're just going to be going back to our enemy kobold. Let me just get the reference up there. And enemy kobold, and I'm just going to be creating a signal called remove from array object. I'm also going to be adding this to let me just make sure that I'm doing this correctly. Yes, so we have a signal which is remove from array object, and I'm just going to be emitting it here just before it queue frees, and we're just going to be doing remove from array object, and we're going to be making ourselves the object. Now we're going to be doing the exact same thing for our ice spear. So I'm just going to copy and paste our signal here, and then going to go back to the enemy, and I am just going to copy and paste the emit signal remove from array on the ice spear here just before it queue frees itself on the enemy hit function, and just before it queue frees itself on the timeout function. Now we'll go back into our hurt box, and what we are going to be doing is we are going to be, number one, checking if area dot has signal. So we're going to be detecting whether it has the signal remove from array. Now we are going to be connecting the signal via code. So number one, we're going to be checking if not area dot is connected remove from array. We're going to be doing a callable So we're going to be checking whether, let's say, our enemy or our ice spear has the remove from array function and signal, and then we're just going to be doing a callable on self, and then we are going to be connecting that to a function that we haven't made yet called remove from list. And I'm just going to quickly make the function remove from list. So function remove from list. And all remove from list is going to do is if hit once array has the object, and I just have to add the object as an argument, we are going to erase the object. So now that we've checked that we haven't connected it, we're just going to connect it. So dot area connect remove from array callable self remove from list. So this is how you can connect a signal via code. So now, instead of getting hit twice, if we set our enemy hurtbox type to hit once, we should see that the ice spear should pass through the enemy. So we can see that it actually managed to pass through the enemy, which is cool. So it doesn't get hit twice. Alright, so those are the two more complicated things. Now we're just going to add a couple more things, such as the enemy getting hit, a sound effect for that, and the enemy deaf. So to start, we're just going to add a audio stream player 2D, and I am going to be adding the enemy hit OG to that. I'm also going to be renaming this to sound underscore hit. So when we play this, alright, so it's repeating playing it, so I'm just going to go into the import settings of the enemy hit.ogg and re-import it with loop not enabled. So now that is kind of represents a hit. It's a little bit loud for a hit, so I'm just going to do -20 decibels, and when it's just like a nice small indication that the enemy has been hit. So now for what we want to do with this, I'm going to be doing an onReady var sound underscore hit, and that's just going to equal sound hit, and we're going to make it so that if the enemy does not die, we're going to be doing an else, and we're just going to be doing a sound hit dot play. So now our enemy should get hit and play a sound, but it doesn't play a sound when it dies. But you can kind of see how that does a hit sound. So we want to create a proper enemy def. So I'm going to be creating a new scene. We're going to click on other node, and we're going to make this scene a sprite 2D. And I'm just going to be calling this explosion. And with this explosion, we're just going to type in explosion to get the PNG file, and you'll see that this is a rather large PNG sprite sheet. Now I'm just going to go into the animation, and I'm going to make it so that it's a 4 H frames, 4 vertical frames, and we get frame 1. Now I'm also going to be adding a audio stream player 2D, which is going to play the explosions. So if I type in, let's type in def, enemy def.og, we should be able to play it, which, number one, it is looping. I'm just going to re-import that. So that's all good. Now, So for the sound explosion, I'm just going to rename that to sound explosion. I'm going to be changing the pitch to 0.5. And you can see how that sounds much more like an explosion in comparison to what it was before. The next thing we're going to be adding in is a animation player. And all we're going to be doing is going to our animation, clicking on new, and I'm just going to type in explode for the animation name. I'm going to be setting this timer to 0.32 because it is going to be a quick timer, and I'm going to be setting the snap to 0.02. And all we're going to be doing is we're just going to be going to the frame of the animation, and we're going to be adding a bunch of keyframes. So we're just going to be clicking on this as it naturally increases to the very end. And like, it works pretty well. So this is going to be our explosion animation. Pretty quick. So I'm just going to save this, and I'm going to be saving this under enemy. Don't know why it's an ice spear at the moment. Godot for beta bugs, I guess. So we're going to save that. And we're going to add a script to it as well. And this is just going to be a really simple script. So number one, we want to play the animation player. So I'm not going to do any on-ready stuff. We're just going to play this like with the $sign to reference the animation player. And we're going to do this to play. And we're going to make it play explode. And then in our animation, we're going to connect the finished signal, and we're just going to cue free the explosion. For our sound, I'm just going to make this set to autoplay. And now that we have our explosion, we have to spawn it. So we're going to be going back to our enemy kobold. And I'm going to create a new variable called var def underscore anim, and this is going to equal a preload. And I'm just going to type an explosion here and just drag and drop the scene file into the preload. And that works pretty well. Now, I'm going to be creating a def function to replace kind of what's in here. So we're gonna add a def here. So if it goes below 0, then we're gonna run def, and it's going to emit the signal to remove it from any hurt box that's set to hit once. And in addition, we're going to spawn our explosion. So var enemy def is going to equal def anim dot instantiate. I'm then going to set the scale to equal the scale of our enemy kobold. Well, let's just make it so that it equals the sprite dot scale. Sprite dot scale. Don't give me. Oh. Thank you. And then we're just going to set the global position equals global position. And then instead of spawning it on our enemy, which is just going to be queue freed, we're actually going to spawn this on our parent. So we're going to type in get parent. And then we're also going to be doing a call deferred because we're queue freeing the enemy like right after, and it doesn't like it. So you do a call deferred. So call deferred, add child, and we're just going to be doing a enemy def. So we're going to spawn the enemy def when this occurs, and this effectively just replaces it all. So let's see if this works. So we got our enemy, and no, it's going down. So we can see that it just exploded. which is all pretty cool. But I may just change how things get drawn on screen because I want the explosion to be over the ice spear. So I'm going to set the Z index of our explosion to 1. And hopefully that should... Yep, so we can see right there that the explosion goes over. And yeah, this is the end of this video tutorial. A couple of things to discuss in theory time, but yeah, have a good one. See you there. Bye. The knockback amount and the angle are retrieved from the attack, in our case, the ice spear. After some checks to make sure that the variables exist, we retrieve them from our attack and then transfer them to the hurt signal. The knockback vector 2 within the enemy is then calculated by multiplying the angle by the knockback amount. This works because the knockback will often be a vector 2 that is close to the opposite of the direction that the enemy is moving in. Within the physics frame, we add the knockback to the velocity, which will determine where the enemy direction actually goes. In addition, we will adjust the knockback amount to be less and less each frame by making it move towards a vector 2.0, where it won't impact movement at all. The more knockback recovery, the faster the knockback goes back to vector 2.0, where there is no more knockback. In our hitbox hurtbox type, we only want the hurtbox to get hit once by each attack. The way we do this is by tracking what has hit us within an array. When hit by an attack, we check if the hurtbox has already been hit by that attack. If it has, then we just ignore the attack by returning the function. If it's not in the array, we add it to the array so we can ignore it for future hits. We then connect the area signal removed from array from the hurtbox removed from list function. These signals are called by the ice spear and enemies just before they are about to delete themselves. The reason we do this is because we don't want our hurtbox arrays to be filled with objects that don't exist. It's just a good bit of cleanup. In our hurt function for the enemy, we check if the HP is less or equal to 0. If not, we play the hit sound. If it is equal or less than 0, we emit our remove from array signal to clear the enemy from any hit once hurt boxes that it may be a part of. Afterwards, we instantiate the explosion scene, set the scale of the size of the enemy sprite, set the global position, and then spawn it onto the parent of the enemy, which will be the enemy spawner, before we delete the enemy. The explosion will play its animation when it spawns and then delete itself once it's done, also playing an explosion sound.